Welcome to Beyond the Board, where we break bread with some of the most interesting industry leaders. I'm Sonia Gafsio-Bliss, and I'm honored to host in-depth conversations with innovative and impactful leaders in the food industry. Today, I'm sitting with Neka Pasquale, founder of Urban Remedy. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Well, thank you. Neka, you have such an interesting story. Will you share a little bit about how you started in the food business?
Yeah, so my background is in Chinese medicine. I'm a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist, and I had a practice for a little over 10 years. And it kind of started for me in acupuncture school when I started learning about food as medicine. And in Chinese medicine, food is one of the main tenets and foundations of health. And so in Chinese medicine, every food has a taste and a temperature and an organ associated with it. So you can really look at food and the medicinal properties of ingredients. And I thought that was so interesting. And because I love to cook, even back then I was like, wow, you could create soups and all these different things that truly are medicinal, that taste good. And so I was just interested in kind of the healing powers of food. So I kind of brought that into my practice and saw how when people change their diet, it could really affect their health and chronic disease. And so that's really how it started. I never wanted to start a food company. I didn't write a business plan like, this is what I'm doing. It just was a natural kind of evolution.
So I'm curious, what brought you to acupuncture in the first place?
I knew I was really interested in health and wellness. And so I did my pre-med and I kind of figured out that Western medicine wasn't really my avenue. And I actually wanted to study naturopathic medicine, but at that time it was illegal in California. And in California, if you're an acupuncturist, you're still a primary care physician. So you could treat a variety of things. I was really interested in alternative health and herbology. And so legally to treat different ailments, you have to be licensed. And so I kind of went into Chinese medicine not realizing how difficult it was going to be. It's a 4-year master's program. So you do 2 years of doctorate work. And you learn a lot about Western medicine as well. And I went in thinking, I'm going to do this, but kind of do my own thing. And then I delved into the magic of Chinese medicine. And I was just blown away by the beauty of that medicine and how it incorporates all systems into it. And it really was very inspiring. I'm so glad that I did that.
That's fascinating and like an amazing journey of learning your passion, but also then how you can apply that to helping others. So what was there like an aha moment that convinced you that like this idea grounded in Chinese medicine, that food can really be used for healing, that there's an opportunity to scale that and a big audience of folks that will, or customers that will come to you or come to the company for this type of solution?
I really started small, right? I had my practice and I started using these principles with just the people that were in my practice. And it just was this natural growth where I started doing retreats and I would bring people and they would tell their friends. And it was at that time I did all live raw food and juicing. And long story short, my main goal was to create food that naturally lowered inflammation, was low glycemic, and really was very healing to people. I was seeing a lot of people with chronic inflammatory conditions like prediabetes, all the itises, and saw people getting better. So I was trying to incorporate all these principles together. And then I started doing it and people started telling other people. And then it just turned into this thing. And I opened my first store in 2012 or 13. And I really thought it was just going to be like a niche little store for people that were like ultra healthy. And so I built that store out and then within 6 months outgrew it.
Wow.
And so like I said, I never really thought that this was going to be, because this was before like there was a lot of juice places and stuff. And so it really has all just kind of fallen into place. It was like the right time where people were really interested in that, and then I had the journey of, taking investment and then turning into like a CEO and, doing all of that and then scaling. And I really had no idea how to do it. And so I kind of was like learning as I was going.
Yeah. I'm curious that when you first opened, your customers, were they coming to you because they just wanted delicious, convenient food, or did they understand actually this notion that food can be healing?
I think it was both, right? So Marin, where I opened it, it's a very health conscious place. And people knew me from my acupuncture practice. So I definitely had my patients and I had a pretty busy practice. And so people started people started coming. When I first opened, my store was in a very busy area, and people come in and they'd be like, "Oh, good luck." Like, I don't think it's really going to do great. And I'm like, "Oh, it's really just a little place I'm going to make the stuff." But I just had this teeny little storefront. And it just got so busy. It was the only place around that offered real fresh juices. And like I would make all these blends and people just told each other, and I would do like desserts and salads, and it just got really busy. And then my first investors were really, their sweet spot was online customer acquisition. So then they were like, let's start shipping. And so we did that and, launched our website, and then it just went gangbusters without really creating the foundation for like, how do you ship fresh food and what kind of boxes do you use and everything. And so there's, that was a very interesting
big learning
experience.
curve, a big learning journey. So how do you think about bringing in the elements of traditional Chinese medicine into your product development, and how do you decide what you're going to retain, where you're going to augment with more culinary or new science? Like, what's that journey for you?
Well, I always bring in both sides because I studied a ton of like functional medicine. Obviously, I'm an herbalist and I obviously know Chinese medicine. And so I really infuse those with everything that I do, because you can look at like something like turmeric, for example. Like we've been using turmeric in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries. And then you'll see like a wave where everybody's like, oh, take turmeric for inflammation. And so I love like in traditional Chinese medicine, like we've been using turmeric for like PMS or aches and pains or to heal the liver. So I take both aspects of the Western and the Eastern and always try to craft products that naturally lower inflammation, that are naturally low glycemic, products that are minimally processed, that really encourage true health and vitality.
Yeah.
But the main thing is I want it to taste good. And so I'm always looking to make things very colorful, because colorful foods naturally contain phytochemicals and antioxidants, which fight free radicals. So I'm always trying to create things that are beautiful to look at, that taste good, and that your body really likes and makes you feel good.
That's awesome. How have you been thinking about making clean food more accessible to more customers? Just as you've scaled your business from the storefront and online, especially in communities that traditionally haven't had access?
Well, I think partnering with you guys has really helped us. Obviously, our partnership with Whole Foods. We had expanded from Marin County into all of California through Whole Foods, which was such a exciting thing. And then now we're national. And then we went to the East Coast. And I think just being able to be in Whole Foods and be accessible is a great thing. And you and I have talked about like food waste, and we're really interested in, how do we, like if we have food that's about to expire, instead of throwing it away, how do we give that to people that might not be able to afford it otherwise? Because we're certified organic, it's difficult with the price point because we use obviously very more expensive ingredients, being certified organic and with our certification. But it's something that we think about and we're very conscious of, and we do donate a lot of food locally.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
So tell us more about your journey with Whole Foods. So you had your storefront, you did a little online, it was going crazy. How did you end up partnering with Whole Foods to launch Urban Remedy?
So my CEO at that point, Paul Coletta, was good friends, and now I'm going to forget his name. He was one of the head guys that was in Berkeley, and he was good friends with Paul, and they were on a bike ride. And Paul was like, hey, what if we just like did like a store in a store at Whole Foods, and we had a target, sale per day. And we just do a test. And if we do good in NorCal, then we'll go to SoCal. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And at first I was like, that's so weird. Like I never just imagined anything like that. And we did it. And we sold like 4 times whatever the target was.
Wow.
And then we went to Southern California where there was no brand awareness. And then I was a little nervous. I'm like, nobody knows about us. And we did even better in SoCal. And so that's really kind of how it started. We just did this little test. And then we opened the store in the Gilman store.
Yes.
And did really well. And so, yeah, it's been a amazing journey.
That's great. And then how did you get the idea of having your branded refrigerated kiosk in stores? Because that's very, I would say, unique for most brands when they launch, like they're merchandised with the rest of the product set, but you all definitely took a different approach.
Yeah, and I feel so grateful to have that because it's such a rarity. To be able to be in Whole Foods with your own branded kiosk is incredible. And really, it was just part of the original concept. It was kind of like, we want to bring something to Whole Foods that's really special. So when you go to that kiosk, it's a food safe zone. So every time, and we've heard this a lot from customers, when they go to our little kiosks in Whole Foods, they know it's always dairy-free, always gluten-free. A lot of people say, it's the one place I can go that I don't need to look at the ingredient list. Like, I know you never use white sugar, white flour, highly processed ingredients, colors, dyes. And so that's kind of how we look at it. It's a place you can go and know that like you're getting the cleanest, certified organic, healthiest food available.
It's also anti-inflammatory.
And it's anti-inflammatory, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the brand Urban Remedy. How did you come up with that? You have a very distinct look. I think that also draws people in. I'd love to hear how that came to be.
Yeah, you know what? The name I started when I had my acupuncture practice, I had one product that I was making that I was just bringing into my office and people would buy them. It was banana brittle. It was one of the first things I made, which sadly we called, it was so good. It was like my version of a peanut brittle, but it was like dehydrated banana with coconut. So I was sitting with a friend and I was like thinking, I'm going to put a label on this and what am I going to call it? And I lived in San Francisco at the time. And we were just talking about kind of my vision. I was like, well, Urban Remedy is kind of like the remedy for the urban lifestyle. It's for busy people that want to eat healthy and don't have the access or know-how. And so then we came up with the name Urban Remedy.
I love it.
And the branding, I've been doing since the beginning. I'm very involved with all the branding and marketing materials. And I just love the way that we try to keep it simple and we use our little symbols and just make it colorful. But in a very simplistic way. So I'm really proud of the brand that we've created and our identity.
It's beautiful and very ingredient forward. I think it speaks to the clean nature of the products and definitely connects back to your background as an herbalist, which is really nice.
We try to give the functional benefits of each product, either in the naming concept or in, the underlying messaging.
For sure. So the wellness food space or even food as healing has obviously exploded since you started. How do you maintain your edge while staying true to your healing food philosophy in an increasingly crowded market?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I've been thinking about that lately. One thing I'm really proud of is that when I started Urban Remedy, I started with the same tenets that we have now, that everything was certified organic, clean, no highly processed ingredients, made to heal, made to lower inflammation. We've never, for example, used, highly processed seed oils. So that's been something that we've never done. And now it's so funny because everybody's very anti-seed oil and talking about seed oils, and we've never used those. So, I feel like there's a lot of fads that come and go, but we have stuck to kind of the original principles. And I feel like those principles will always be applicable because it's really, like I said, anti-inflammatory, colorful, very simple ingredients. I think the more you process anything, the more it's, the higher the glycemic index and your body processes things in a different way. So
absolutely. What was the biggest or most surprising lesson from your acupuncture practice that has helped you as a CEO?
I think starting my own business, my own acupuncture practice, was probably my greatest lesson, in even maybe if it was like figuring out how to bill insurance companies and how to manage patients and all of that. But really, just doing it was, I think I grew up with, my mom was a business owner. And so I grew up around, a strong woman who had a very successful business and worked really hard.
What did she do?
She has a spa. She's had it for like
wow.
45 years.
Oh, that's cool.
And my grandparents, I used to work in their store, and I was working since I was 16. And so I've always had kind of a drive and
a retail
craving
bent.
to learn. Yeah,
that's great.
But I've made a lot of mistakes, like starting Urban Remedy. There's been a lot of mistakes made along the way. I've never had any background in finance. And once you start taking investment, really understanding how all of that works was very, especially as a woman in a boardroom,
Of course. Of course. Will you share a little bit about some of the biggest obstacles, or it sounds like you also had personal challenges while you were scaling the business? Anything you would share?
There's been so many because it's been 13 years. But, I think when you start a business that you're really passionate about and it's your baby, it's hard to relinquish control. Because, and then working with different people, sometimes there's a great synergy. And sometimes with marketing, for example, we've had different CMOs along the way where maybe they had this vision that was not in alignment with my vision. So how do you, manage that? How do you manage people? I think, we had a time where we had 350 employees, and also I was a single mom. I had just gotten divorced when I started Urban Remedy. I wrote a book. I was the CEO and doing all these things, being a doer and constantly, and then feeling like you have to show up for everybody in a certain way. How do you really balance your own health and wellness while trying to show up for people? And I think when you're a leader in a company like that, there is a little bit of a pressure to always show up and always do what you're supposed to do. And so I think along the way, if I look back at myself 10 years ago, I'd be take a little more time for self-care, and you don't have to do all the time.
Yep. Would you say that's the biggest thing that shaped you as a leader now? Is that journey and finding time for yourself?
I think so. I mean, now that's critical for me. But I think over the first 10 years, I just was a crazy person. If there was an ingredient that was out of stock, I would be the one that would drive to the store to get it or figure it out.
Because owner's mentality. It's
totally.
Great. Yes.
If something wasn't going to get somewhere, I'd be if you guys aren't going to do it, I'm going to get in the truck and I will drive myself. So it's that. So it's that letting go of you've hired people that are really good. So to trust the team and to not have to be in control of every little
absolutely
thing.
So key for every leader is empowering your team.
Yeah.
And you have a team for
and you and I at our last meeting, you were
yes.
hey, why aren't those chocolate bars still in there? And I could feel myself being I want the chocolate bars to be there too. You know what I mean? Because I want to make the customers happy, and there's certain things, and then there's certain decisions you have to make. And so it's tough when it's your baby.
Progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
That's exactly what it's all about. Progress, not perfection.
It's true.
So regenerative agriculture, we talk about this a lot at Whole Foods, and it is so critical for our future. Could you share specific examples of how Urban Remedy is supporting regenerative farming practices and maybe some of the impact that you all are seeing?
Absolutely. Being a certified organic company, we only work with organic and regenerative farms. So that in itself, and there's a lot of organic farms that are regenerative, but there's not really, you probably know, there's not a true certification for regenerative. But we do try to partner with certified regenerative farms, but also have flexibility because there's a lot of farms that are organic that can't afford to go through the process. And so we've actually helped some of our partners become organic and become certified organic. So I'm very proud of that. And we, like I said, when I'm creating food, we always look for the regenerative first, then it always has to be certified organic. But that's a non-negotiable for us. So we're really proud of that. And I personally, where I live locally, have been really involved in trying to save these dairy farms where we live that were regenerative organic dairy farms that that they were closing.
That's awesome.
And so how do we educate people on the difference between like organic regenerative dairy and, factory farmed, larger scale operations? And how do we, as citizens really understand the impact of food safety and our local cultures, how important these farms are? And I feel like that's something that a lot of people aren't really aware of, that we're losing so many small farmers. And so
it's, in fact, I was talking to someone else about that today, but the small farms, the family owned farms are maintaining a sustainable food system is so
it's so important.
So.
And a lot of people think that animals aren't part of that system. And so it's really interesting. I mean, and at Urban Remedy, we don't use milk. And so I don't have an investment in that. But just the understanding of regenerative, how animals grazing and
biodiversity,
the biodiversity of everything. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that love Urban Remedy that are, very maybe don't understand the impacts of that people are going to drink milk and the differences between supporting these kinds of farmers and not. So that's something that I have been pretty vocal about and trying to support where I live. Yeah.
That is wonderful. I'm curious how you go about identifying your supplier partners or farmers and ranchers that you work with.
Well, normally when I start the R&D process of if I'm using a new ingredient, I'll try to see what's out there. And a lot of times, let's see, I'll try to think of an example. I'm developing something a fermented product right now. And it's going to be a bowl. It'll be out soon. And so because we're in your store and everything has to be approved by the Whole Food team, a lot of times I'll go to Whole Foods and make sure like the ingredient is GRAS certified, or if it's not at Whole Foods, a lot of times I'll make sure ahead of time that it's an approved ingredient. And then, but there's some ingredients like chlorophyll, for example, and there's, that are more exotic ingredients, not that chlorophyll is super exotic, but we have to make sure that we have a supplier that's certified organic and that passes our, safety inspection. Sure. And so I try to do that ahead of time because I have developed things in the past and then had my team go, and then the ingredient won't pass inspection or something. And then it's such a bummer when you can't find a supplier. But we have a great purchasing team. And like for all fruits and vegetables, we already have suppliers for most everything because we juice so many different fruits and vegetables. But if it's something new, we just try to go through, the process, or we go through the process of finding the supplier that's organic and as local as possible.
That's great. It's wonderful to hear how thoughtful your team is and you are about ingredient sourcing. Obviously, at Whole Foods, we're very proud of our ingredient standards and all of our banned ingredients. So it's always a delight to hear how we're being supported by our suppliers also in this journey and really making sure that we can identify source of supply of clean ingredients, not only just to sell directly, but also into inputs in all of our products.
Yeah. So and I personally taste every ingredient before it's approved. And, down to our salts, like we only do mineral salts. We don't do iodized salt. So we are very particular about all the ingredients that we use.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm so curious about the business and how you've really integrated true food philosophy, making healthy food more convenient for so many. I'm going to switch gears now and go into our lightning round. Okay. So a few questions here. How do you spend the first hour of your day?
So I used to have to get my son ready for school. I'd drive him to school, but he just got an e-bike. So now now my mornings are free, which is like a total game changer. So I try every morning to meditate when I wake up. And that is the one thing that I try to do that is really changes my whole day.
Start your day grounded. Are you an experienced at meditation or building your muscle?
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there a practice or principle within your routine that you would prioritize no matter what the circumstance is?
Yes. Right now, I would say the practice that I do every day is some sort of somatic tracking, some sort of somatic therapy, just connecting to my body, listening to my body. And that could be part of my meditation, but sometimes it's just sitting for 2 minutes when I'm busy and just like tuning into my body and just seeing how I feel and just doing a tracking. And that's been a real game changer for me.
Really? Tell more.
I think our bodies speak to us, and going back to the doing, it's like when we wake up and we're just moving and going and talking and on our computers, it's really easy to just disconnect from ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I've learned over the past maybe 3 or 4 years about somatic body work, somatic training, somatic tracking. And it's really just a simple practice of really just tuning into your body and just being like, oh, what is my body feeling right now? And I love it because in Chinese medicine, every organ has a emotion associated to it. And so it's kind of like, what are you feeling right now? And letting your body express whatever it's feeling. And there's a real felt sense of connection in the simplicity of just like being with your body and listening to our bodies are always speaking to us. So what's our body saying? And then you get this kind of more presence with other people too, because you're able to kind of feel into yourself a little bit more.
That is beautiful. And thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Next question. What food makes you instantly happy?
Matcha. For sure. I'm such a matcha freak. I eat a matcha bar every day, an Urban Remedy matcha bar.
Of course.
And I've already had 3 matchas today. I love it. It's my favorite thing. I love matcha.
That's a good one. What is the most unexpected ingredient in your kitchen?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. Okay. I have something that people might think it's a little weird. Unexpected. I have, so I put my water in a structured water kind of machine so that I can drink structured water. It's like a vortex thing that structures your water, and supposedly like it's really good for your cells, and it's like mimics the way water naturally moves like through rocks and down streams. And
I have never heard of this. I'm now going to do a little research. Okay, please. That is fascinating. Favorite restaurant and what you are ordering there?
Okay.
And you're allowed to say that you're ordering Urban Remedy on Whole Foods Market.
Well, obviously I'm doing Amazon. And I actually, now that we don't have storefronts, it's so weird. I go on Amazon, order my groceries from Whole Foods, and I'll get my own matcha bars when I run out of them.
That's great.
But
your favorite restaurant.
But my favorite restaurant, I was thinking about this. I honestly, and there's not even one where I live, but I love Cafe Gratitude.
Oh, yeah.
And I love what they do. And I love those guys. And I love the nachos there. They're so good.
Yes. It's delicious food and a lovely purpose for that restaurant. What's the most important lesson you've learned in business, and from whom?
I think the most important lesson I've learned is when I look at like my evolution from starting to now is really, being yourself and being able to be authentic. And I think as a woman, like I was saying before, sometimes when you're dealing with investors and being in a boardroom, it's a little bit intimidating. And so I noticed, probably the first few years I started Urban Remedy, I was so quiet and I was embarrassed to say that I didn't know what people were talking about. And then I had to learn over the years to ask questions, and it's okay that you don't know everything.
That's right.
And trying to surround myself with people that are smarter than me and know more than me and what their expertise is, and being able to listen and pivot. Yeah.
That's great advice. What's a little known fact about you that might surprise people?
I was raised off the grid when I was very young. My parents were very young when they had me. My mom was 21, and they were real hippies. And we lived up in the Trinity Alps, and it's called the Emerald Triangle.
Yes.
And we didn't have electricity, and we truly lived off the grid. And so I grew up as like a real kind of hippie kid until I started school, and we moved obviously to a place where there was school and had power and all that kind of stuff. But maybe that's
That is a fun fact, and I bet you that serves you well today in all of your connections and meditation practices.
I think so.
There's a nugget there. And then lastly, what's next for Urban Remedy?
You know, it's so exciting because we've really tried to simplify, and our current CEO, Steve, has done a really great job getting us to the place that we needed to get to scale and being able to forecast properly and make sure that we're in stock, because that's been one of our, bigger challenges. And, there's not a lot of companies that are scaling fresh. And so we've really are still trying to learn and do our best. Like, how do we stay in stock with as little shrink as possible? And that's really what we're really focused on. And so simplifying, like, we don't do direct to consumer anymore. We've closed our retail stores. So we're very, very focused on
executional excellence. Yes. I would put it in that bucket. Well, that is awesome. It was lovely being able to connect. I am definitely a big fan of the products, and it's just a delight to hear how you're bringing your personal journey and your experience in food as healing to the market in a way that it can be accessible to so many. So thank you so much for joining us today on Beyond the Board. Until next time, let's keep supporting companies like Urban Remedy that are bringing innovation and a fresh approach to our shelves. Thanks, Neka.
Thank you.